So yet another example here, y'all. Yet another example of complete and utter media capitulation to Trump. This time, it's the LA Times. So look at this in Mediaite. Billionaire LA Times owner reportedly quashed op-ed critical of Trump's cabinet picks. So let's understand something. There's a reason why all of these media outlets are doing this. There's a reason why Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos and other oligarch robber barons are making the trek to Mar-a-Lago and literally, in some instances, handing a check of $1 million to Trump for his inauguration. The reason that they're doing that is they want to make sure the favoritism continues. They want to make sure they keep getting their corporate welfare and their subsidies and their tax cuts and their government contracts. They want to make, oh, shit, we got to get on the proper side of this guy, or else he might do retribution against us. He might cut off the money to us. That's why they're doing it. So in other words, it has nothing to do with principle. It has nothing to do with a genuine change of heart about how this guy governs. It is all brazen corruption. The billionaire owner of the Los Angeles Times moved to kill a recent opinion piece on President-elect Trump's controversial cabinet picks, according to new reporting by the New York Times on Thursday. Media reporter Katie Robertson scooped the fact that Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong intervened when he found out that the paper would publish a piece titled "Donald Trump's Cabinet Choices Are Not Normal. The Senate's confirmation process should be." Robertson wrote, "One writer prepared an editorial arguing that the Senate should follow its traditional process for confirming nominees, particularly given the board's concerns about some of his picks, and ignore Mr. Trump's call for so-called recess appointments. The paper's owner, the billionaire medical entrepreneur Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, had other ideas." So, by the way, understand what they're saying here. The point of the article was just, can we please follow the regular process and procedure and don't have Trump make recess appointments and don't shove these people down our throats and just go through the normal thing that any Democrat would do? Can we please do that, please? And this guy's intervening. No. So understand how this moves the Overton window to the right. No matter how insane or extreme a position Trump takes, he's there to quash criticism of that thing. Not even allow the criticism of it. Soon-Shiong, who was born in South Africa, has stirred controversy in recent months after he also stopped the paper from publishing its endorsement of Vice President Kamala Harris ahead of the presidential election, despite it already being written. I'm noticing a theme here. South African billionaires being colossal assholes and people who probably shouldn't be in this country. You know what? Deport this guy too. Deport Elon Musk and deport this guy. These are the immigrant, robber baron, welfare queens who want to shake down the U.S. taxpayer and continue to run out the back door with all the money as they make horrible decisions that hurt our country. Why should these immigrants be allowed to stay here? I got no problem with some Guatemalan family that crosses the border without $1 in their pocket and they bust their ass and work hard to create a better life for them and their family. I got no problem with them. These guys I have a problem with. The decision prompted a backlash within the paper and led to several high-profile resignations. Again, I think there were resignations last time with the Kamala thing, too. Soon-Shiong has since vowed to reshape the paper under the guise of making it more balanced. Oh, boy. Robertson reported on his latest move, explaining in detail how it unfolded. Hours before the editorial was set to be sent to the printer for the next day's newspaper, Dr. Soon-Shiong told the opinion department's leaders that the editorial could not be published unless the paper also published an editorial with an opposing view. Guys, again, I need you to stop and think about this. If/when Trump decides we are going to invoke the Insurrection Act, we are going to declare martial law, we are going to deploy the U.S. military against protesters in our own streets. According to this guy's logic, number one, you can't run a piece simply criticizing that and saying it's wrong and bad. You can't do that. Number two, to the extent you comment on it, you have to show both sides. Oh, do you? So if Israel wants to nuke Gaza and Trump supports Israel nuking Gaza or annexing the entire West Bank, you have to show both sides of that? Is that what you have to do? God, this is embarrassing. Baffled by his order and with the print deadline approaching, editors removed the editorial headline, "Donald Trump's cabinet choices are not normal. The Senate's confirmation process should be." It never ran. Dr. Soon-Shiong's intervention, recounted by 4 people inside the Times, would speak only anonymously in one of a string of events in which has waded into the publication's opinion section in ways that he hadn't until this fall's presidential campaign. Soon-Shiong recently cut off an interview with the media reporter Oliver Darcy after Darcy pressed him on his hiring of Scott Jennings, the pro-Trump pundit on CNN. Darcy asked Soon-Shiong if he believed putting an avowed partisan like Jennings on the editorial board was the right way to balance it out, which abruptly ended their conversation. So again, let's stop and look at the mainstream media landscape here. You have Fox News, you have One American News Network, you have Newsmax. They are dyed-in-the-wool, hardcore MAGA, will never buck MAGA, right? Just full-on Republican propaganda. And now what you're seeing in this new era is CNN, MSNBC, the LA Times, many other outlets, which are supposed to be more above the fray and supposed to be more, we're calling balls and strikes and just telling the truth. They're saying, no, you got to fake balance everything. Everything's got to be 50-50. Everything's got to be neutral. Everything's got to be both sidesism. Everything's got to be false equivalence. So that leaves the media landscape with nobody in the mainstream just telling the truth, just being honest, just putting out there positive and correct criticisms of Trump and the Republicans now that they're in control of every branch of government. There's nobody doing that. Guys, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the lead up to the Iraq War. That's what it reminds me of. It reminds me of the early Bush era. Because in that era, you had the loudest, most arrogant, most aggressive voices which dominated the media landscape. It was the Fox News types who were cheerleading the war in Iraq, calling you unpatriotic if you opposed it, saying you hate the troops if you oppose it. That was the overwhelming consensus of the media. And to the extent you had anybody disagree with it, first of all, it wasn't until years later, but it would be the most tepid, false equivalence, both sides, maybe, maybe not type arguments. And that gives people a misleading impression of the nature of reality. It makes it look like, oh, there's a consensus here, and therefore, whatever, we got to go along with it. But that's not true. That is not true. And so this is, honestly, it's as dark of a place for media as I've seen since the early Bush era. And that's how you got a situation where the media would either say nothing about the worst scandals, or they would actively egg on the Bush administration doing their worst, most authoritarian policies. Think of like the torture policy. There were articles running like, we're going to defend torture. Really? Do you have to do both sides of literal torture, something that's against U.S. law and international law and the Constitution? And oh yeah, by the way, we're torturing people who happen to have nothing to do with anything. They're innocent people who got caught up in this and got tortured at Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay. Do you really need to do either cheerleading for it or both sides tepid nonsense? Really? And this is why you see, again, we'll do a segment on this tomorrow, CNN, MSNBC, all these outlets, people are fleeing them at 1,000 miles an hour. Fox News has never been stronger. Their numbers have never been stronger. They're on the winning side, and they're going to feed people the slop that they want to hear. But you have the total capitulation of, what's supposed to be the better networks, the liberal networks. And so now there's a lane wide open, and the lane is, can anybody just come here and tell the truth? Can anybody just not be a weaselly little bitch and try to couch something in neutrality at all times? And so, by the way, they think this is the path to maintaining relevance too. Boy, oh boy, do I have bad news for them. Because the MAGA types are never going to trust you, LA Times, over Fox News, over One American News, over Newsmax, they're never going to trust you, ever. So what you do is alienate and piss off your entire liberal audience, progressive audience, leftist audience, even centrist audience. You piss them off while also not bringing in new conservatives or MAGA types to read your stuff. So now you just blew all your trust, right? So what a dark time, y'all. What a dark time. Complete and utter capitulation to an authoritarian administration, which is primed to make horrific decisions. And by the way, even the kind of criticism they were giving to Trump's picks, these are really soft. And even this soft criticism wasn't allowed unless you counterbalanced it with an opposite opinion. That's crazy, bro. That's crazy. So we're all just resigned to somebody who's massively anti-vaccine becoming the head of Health and Human Services? Have we lost our minds? We're resigned to a guy who promotes raw milk being the head of Health and Human Services at the exact same time that raw milk is making people sick all over the goddamn place? This is what we're resigned to? I mean, you got cranks in Trump's admin, like Kash Patel was selling a pill on social media that he claimed reversed the vaccine. And we're not supposed to criticize. He wrote a children's book basically arguing Trump should be an emperor. We're not supposed to criticize him. We're not supposed to criticize I don't even know. I lost count. 7, 8, 9, 10 neocons that Trump picked. People like Marco Rubio who want to destroy Latin America and never met a war he didn't like. People who very clearly want a war with Iran today. We're supposed to sit back and be like, bro, hey, he won. He gets to do what he wants to do, bro. This is terrible. It's absolutely horrible. So I would hope that they get their shit together and they shape up, but I don't see any prayer of that, y'all. I really don't. And their loss is our gain, as in our media outlets on the actual independent left-wing perspective. We are surging as a result of them absolutely imploding. But you know what? I wish that weren't the case, because I want more voices saying the correct things to shift public opinion and not let Trump get away with anything and everything. And we are very, very far from that. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.